All right, great. Another podcast. We have some exciting stuff today. We're talking about 8-man football with Coach Funburg, head coach at Canadian High School in Oklahoma. To my right, I have Coach DePascal. As always, my right hand guy talking football. We're excited to talk about this, and we're gonna get into Coach's career a little bit, and then we'll let him roll with it. But it's exciting to have him on. It's a topic that we don't often cover. A lot of people don't cover often, but we want to cover it. We want to make sure we talk about it because we cover everything from a football standpoint. So, without further ado, some interesting background. So, Coach, and I don't know if that's like if it's still the case, but Coach was when he was hired as a head coach. He was 21 years old. His first head coaching job. He was the youngest head coach at the time in the country. He had also served, as an assistant at East Central University and I don't even know how to say it. Saskatchewan High School. Yeah, high school. Um, and so he has a um, unique skill set that he's actually been a head coach from a very, very young age before taking over. Obviously, right now, taking over most recently at Canadian High School. So he really's got some interesting things to share from that standpoint. I'm sure some great experiences. And he coaches 8-man football, which a lot of people who play 11-man are not in an area where there is 8-man football don't know a ton about it, other than that it's wide open, right? It's very wide
Right.
open. But yeah, so without further ado, Coach, I'll let you kind of talk about your playing career and how you got into coaching and where you're at now.
Okay, yeah, so great. Again, my name is Kathen Funburg. I originally grew up in Texas. I played 11-man football. 8-man is not a thing in Texas. It's 6-man, actually. So I grew up, graduated high school in 2019, went and played small college football in Kansas at Tabor College. I played there for a year, and then I knew coaching was kind of the next step for me. So moved back to Oklahoma. That's kind of where my dad's from the Eufaula area. So started at East Central University, got my feet, enrolled, and then I started reaching out to coaches in the area. Hey, I'm looking to start coaching. What can I do? And then the school, Sasakwa, got back to me, and I got started there. And then I didn't know they were 8-man. I didn't really know what that looked like until I started coaching. So my first 8-man game was the one I was on the sideline with. So it was a neat experience. A year later, I got brought up, asked to be an offensive coordinator at Prue High School. Went up there in April. It was a good time. And then the head coach left me during dead week, which, the July 4th. So an 8-man, your staffs are probably like from anywhere from, it could be a one guy deal or it could be up to 4 guys. So not really big staffs. So when I was at Prue, there was me and another guy, and he left to take another opportunity, a month before the season started. So it's kind of how I got thrown into the ringer of being a head coach at 21. I was pumped up, excited about it. It was exciting times, but unfortunately, they shut down the football program. Numbers weren't great. They went to a spring baseball school. So I took another head coaching opportunity at 22 years old at South Coffeyville High School, there's Coffeyville, Kansas, and there's South Coffeyville, Oklahoma.
Right.
Really struggling program, I guess you would say, at South Coffeyville. I can't remember the exact records of it, but I do remember. So an 8-man, you get mercy ruled, if you're up by 45 after halftime, the game's over. So I remember like my first game at head coaching at South Coffeyville, game, I think we lost like 52-6, but it lasted 4 quarters. And I remember the people in South Coffeyville going, "Coach, this is the best thing ever. We haven't had a game last for 4 quarters." So it was a little bit culture shock for me as far as competing at South Coffeyville. And then fast forward, I was only there for a year. Went to Arcoma. Been here for 2 years. We went 2-8 my first year, and then we went 5-5 this year. And then I've now accepted the Canadian high school head football job at just because it made more sense for family and whatnot. So as far as coaching, only being 25, I've kind of been almost everywhere already. Just a lot of head coaching experience. Like next year will be my 6th year, and 5 of those 6 I've been head coaching. So it's been that's how I've learned is everything's through being a head coach, not necessarily the traditional assistant route.
It's it is really interesting the fact that you went right away from being a head coach. Now, were you and I guess an 8-man, it probably is a little more difficult, obviously, to get coaches in general, probably. So when they get someone that has some skill sets and an opportunity presents itself, and then becoming once you've been a head coach in that particular type of football, you have an expertise that a lot of other people probably don't have. So it kind of lends itself to that because a lot of people don't have that. Talk about some of the things that you learned being a head coach, really, really young age, and some of the things that maybe you had to deal with that were difficult for you.
So the parents' credibility, because
Right.
they got kids that are older than you. When I was at Prue, I was only 21, so I had kids that were 17, 18. They graduated in 2021, and I graduated in 2019. So as far as that is being the credible, especially holding their child to a standard as far as discipline and expectations, I think that it's still tough now, even being 25, as parents going, who is this quote kid trying to tell my kid, discipline, expectations, raising them to be a young man when this guy is still trying to figure it out, which I am. As far as the kids, my relationship with the kids is kind of different. It's more of a big brother role as in not a father figure. So that's kind of helped me out as far as recruiting kids out in the hallways. That's really something I hang my hat on, especially with 8-man schools is, roster numbers are really small. Everywhere I've been at so far, I've had success as doubling roster numbers and building those relationships just because I think of my young age, being able to relate to students, more personally. I guess you'd say some older coaches can.
I think that's definitely a valuable thing. Hello there, miss. Hello.
Hi, lady. Say hey, guys.
How old is she?
I don't know if you.
She's yeah, no, I got you. Hang on. Go on mute.
So what was I gonna say? I think she just started, she's working on her second year now, right? She's 1 year.
She's 23 months, coach. 23 months. She's a trip. Yeah. She's 23 months. So
no, I have
all over the place, dude.
I have a 2.5-year-old, and man, it's a blessing, but holy cow. That's what I gotta say. So far as a dad, it's been the best thing that's ever happened to me. But the credit to the fathers that are listening, you also know it's the toughest thing.
Yeah, no doubt. I have a 9-year-old going on 10. So, and I'm an older guy, so I started late in life on that stuff. So what's really interesting is that, like we talk about the big brother part of it and how that has helped you recruit kids, and I think in the nowadays, I think that does give you a chance to get more kids out and to grow the program from that standpoint, because you can relate to them. Obviously, you're not too far removed, and they know that, and I think that works out really well. What is when you get in the parents, obviously could see that being an issue. So how do you address those things? Because there's a lot of young coaches now that want to be where you are, and a lot of guys that I've seen that are younger that rush through the process, right? And now you happen to be a guy that's been accelerated through that process. Talk about some of the things that you do to really help the parents understand that, hey, that you have the knowledge base, that you have the demeanor to be able to help, discipline the kids, keep them in the right path, those kind of things.
It's the same principles as if it's, just any coach. You're in it for the kids. You care about them. You want them the best that you can do for them. As far as confrontation with the parents, what I've realized is parents just want to be heard about their issues. It's not necessarily they think you're the worst coach ever. They just want to express their concerns for what they have. And to me, you just kind of take everything level-headed as a head coach, you can't, even if you disagree with the question that the parents brings, you're there to understand. I think that's kind of the role now, especially in 2025 as coaching. I mean, because I knew my dad coaching. Whatever the coach said with the parents or the child, that's how it was. Now it's kind of in the balance of where, as a coach, I feel like you kind of have to lay off the gas pedal %. Let the parent, let the child express their issues or whatnot, and you just you keep doing what you're doing as far as your standard, and sometimes that works out with the parent and the child, and sometimes if it doesn't, then it's just not a good fit for that type of character. But for coaches that are listening that want to be the guy, you're not ready until you do it.
Right.
Here I am. Like I said, would be my third head coaching job. And for good reason. It wasn't because I didn't have success. It was just better opportunities. But every place you'll have, you're always learning.
No, there's no doubt about it. And I think that learning process. So it's funny because I was relatively young. I got my first head coaching job. I think I was 30, and I'm now 51. And you could argue that I'm almost already semi-retired. Because I coach my son's teams, but I haven't coached high school, and now I think this will be the 5th year that I've been out. So, but it was very interesting because I only had been 2 years as an assistant at the time. And because I had worked in business first when I first got out of playing in college and did that for a few years and then came back to coaching. But it was very interesting because what I found was the things that really well, like like you have to figure out how to find the balancing acts of the things that you don't know as well as a younger coach until you learn those things. You know what I mean? So
right.
Talk about, is there anything? I'm now 8-man football is a little different because there's less players on the field, which I think lends itself to obviously you're able to focus in a little bit more on things. You don't have as many pieces. And my guess is that most of them play both ways, right?
Yeah. So it's absolutely Ironman football. We're talking about 8-man. Me being an 11-man guy, playing college football 11-man, high school 11-man. The way obviously you're just missing your 2 tackles and you're missing a back.
Right.
Necessarily, I wouldn't say it's totally different. I mean, blocking schemes, coverages are different, right? But same field size, less players. So more explosive plays, more one-on-one type deals. And, talking about X's and O's, how I view it, at first I was an unbalanced single wing guy running power, and I'm thinking, that's what I grew up in, running the football a little bit. And then, this past season I'm going, well, hey, I'm eating my words here. Hey, there's less players, more space. Why not throw it around? And that's exactly what we did, my second year here at Arcoma. And that's, like I said, going from 2-8 to 5-5, improving to every category possible in offense just by spreading the football out. Because, again, in 8-man, if you just throw a little bubble screen and the corner misses a tackle, it's it's a touchdown.
Yeah.
Not necessarily like you say, you see the 6-man scores where it's 108 to 80. But like for instance, we had a game that was 66 to 16.
Yeah.
It's just games like that can get out of hand pretty fast in 8-man too as well. Another thing too that I realized in 8-man is if you have a guy, if you have that dude, and the other team doesn't. One thing I learned, there's nothing you can do as far as schematically, scheme-wise. If you just don't – in 8-man, if you just don't have that guy, it's really hard. And, that's what –
because there's so much space, right? Because there's so much space in that person.
There's so much space. And then, again, if you just don't have the skill set to stop, their dudes, it's really hard as a coach to go, hey, for instance, we're going to be in a 3-2 defense this week because we're going to stop this quarterback. Well, if your middle linebacker, say, is a C-type player, not very great, but their quarterback's A – again, there's really nothing to me as a coach in 8-man. I've realized, it's about the Jimmies and Joes. That's what everyone says, and it's really tough in 8-man if you just don't have those Jimmies and Joes.
No doubt. Well, I mean, I think it's about the Jimmy and Joes on every level, right?
Yeah.
But 8-man exploits that even more, right? Because there's less people on the field, and that higher level guy is even more valuable. It's like playing basketball on a much wider field, right? So that guy in five man in basketball who's really good is really valuable. If you spread the court out and give that guy more space, now he's really going to be valuable, right? He's going to be really hard to stop. So I think that's really interesting. And so where do you? So is quarterback this like? Does it depend on his skill set? Like ideally, where do you want to have? If you have that guy, where does that guy want to? Where do you want him to be? Not to give away any of your secrets, Coach.
No. Listen, that's what I tell everybody. I haven't won a bunch of football games, so it's not like I have anything to hide. But if you have that dude, you say in your hallways, I want to say 99% of the teams that you're playing against, he's the quarterback.
Right.
He's also the middle linebacker. He's also he could be the kicker. He's also the punter. He's if you have that guy, he's your everything, and you rely heavily on him in the 8-man. Necessarily, sometimes you see an 8-man if you do have that guy, but you also have a kid that can throw it really well. You split him out and let him play that way. So it's a lot of manipulation in that way as far as scheming. Because in anything, your defensive backs, the reason why they don't play linebackers is because they can't tackle very well.
Right.
So you split them out as a receiver, or maybe even a tight end, or a running back. It just depends on kind of what you're wanting to look at, what you're wanting to do. As a coach, if you notice there's something there's, as far as a weakness, you might put your stud into certain spots, just like you would in 11-man. That's what people don't understand.
Now, would you move say week to week? Like 1 week he would play quarterback, another week he might go out and play receiver or wide out or something to do that, and kind of like in terms of that type of manipulation, so that like another team wouldn't be able to figure it out.
Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Just the I guess you would say the freedom of offense and the schemes and what you do. Just because, like you say, I'm a spread guy. Well, next week we might be a double tight eye guy because we don't think their nose and middle linebackers are very strong with our front.
That's so cool. That's awesome. That makes sense. It sounds like a shit ton of fun, to be honest. Now, Coach, is your like 8-man team? Is that like the football team for the school, or is there an 11-man on top of it? It's only 8-man within the school itself, correct?
Yeah. So with like our Coma, we're a K through 12 school. So 8-man based off our class sizes, 9th through 12th grade, we're classified as an 8-man school.
Got it.
So like 9th through 12th grade, we have about 110 kids. So like I'm not really sure how it works in other states and what their class sizes look like. But for instance, the smallest 8-man playing school in Oklahoma, 9th through 12th grade, has 20 kids. But and there's different classes. So like there's Class C, and that ranges from 20 kids to about 80 kids. Class B, Division II, is about from 80 kids to that 110 mark, 111 mark. And then there's Class B, Division I, and they're from like that 111 to 150 mark.
Right.
Yeah. So from 20 kids, 9 through 12 to 150 kids, you're more than likely you're playing 8-man. Now you can petition up to play 11-man, just depending on your roster numbers and your success. But most of the part, if you're less than 150, you're playing 8-man.
Interesting. Is when the kids come and play 8-man, are they playing that when they're younger?
So we do have local leagues that play 8-man, but
there's even like a feeder. That's so cool.
Yeah, and then we also have other leagues that play 11-man. For us in our Coma, we have a couple kids that go, to a league that's local to an 8-man, which again, to me as a coach, as a head coach, if we're developing athletes, as long as my elementary kids are involved, I don't care if you're playing 11-man, 9-man, 8-man. As long as you're involved, I don't care what your upbringing is. If you want to play football, play football.
Because
at the end of the day, look, it's still tackling. You're still hitting. It's still all the elements of 11-man football. It's just less guys. You know what I mean? So
sure.
I think that's a great approach to it. I love that, like, they come in knowing like we're an 8-man team, right? And they get kind of some of those elements. I mean, my head's just like spinning, like just thinking about like if there was 8-man, like, because look, there's some small schools in Jersey. I'm not talking like, there's not 20 kids in a 9 through 12, but there are smaller schools that probably would benefit from an 8-man schedule or trying to figure that up here. Because, if they get less numbers, what they do is they combine with like another high school to make an 11-man team. Right.
Yeah.
So
it's a beautiful thing, especially with a game of football, like what you're saying, Coach, is that with the schools that are struggling with numbers to play 11-man, we have the opportunity to still offer football.
Right.
And it's 8-man. Granted, there's still schools that struggle to put 8-man numbers on the field. So there's always trying to find solutions where kids can play football. I think that's so important. And for Oklahoma to offer it, being a small state with a bunch of small schools, it's really a beautiful relationship between the state and the sport we offer.
No doubt about it. What is the as far as like, how do you set things up from a JV? Like how does that all work?
So
or they all play on one thing. They all play like,
man, having a JV 8-man team in Oklahoma. I can't speak for other states that have it. It's like a luxury. It rarely ever happens. Okay. So for instance, 9 through 12, I had this past year I had 26 kids, which is a pretty good roster number.
Yeah.
Finding JV games are really hard just because no other 8-man team really has it. And if they do, you probably have to travel 3 to 4 hours to go play them. For example, my first year here, I think we had 28 kids, and we did have we did schedule a JV game with another varsity opponent, and we had to drive 3.5 hours to go play. And all I did is I brought 10 or 12 kids, that needed the JV game, and we drove on a Saturday. we played, varsity played Friday night. We drove, 3.5, 4 hours to play a varsity opponent because someone dropped them. The other team I don't know what the story was, but they were looking for a game. I said, hey, I got 10 to 12 kids that we need it. So we drove across the state to go play. And it was a blast for those kids, especially with, the playing time, their parents getting to see them play and being in a competitive varsity game and developing.
Yeah, no doubt about it. That's interesting. And you have to drive distances probably in some cases for 8-man, right? So
So my first game here at Canadian, we go to a school, where we're at in Canadian, we're in like the southeastern part of the state. And we got to go to Empire, Oklahoma, which is about 3 hours for us. And that's a non-district game. And that's a drive, typically an 8-man to me, in my opinion, in Oklahoma for a non-district game, I'm looking for, as far as distance wise, I'm looking for anything within an hour and a half to 2 hours. That's the spot where you want to try to hit. I think if you're looking for games for non-district, but when your district happens, it's just region based. So you get set up pretty good as far as distance and traveling.
Now, as far as your year-round development, what are some of the things that you do from a strength and conditioning standpoint, speed standpoint? What does your program look like from a year-round standpoint?
So year-round, small school, you got to share athletes.
Yep.
And I'm a big supporter of go play basketball, go play baseball, go run track, go do something, just because kids don't know it. But each sport, hindsight, helps each other out.
Right.
Like a kid, if you're playing basketball, you're staying active to go play baseball. If you're playing baseball, you're staying active for the summer pride, the weights for football. And now, for my off-season program, because I don't coach basketball or baseball, I probably have around from 6 to 8 kids. It's not very big, and we just do our common core lifts. We do our agility stuff, so it's nothing. I'm not going to come on here and tell you, hey, we got 45 kids, and this is how I run everything. From it's you do what you can do with what you have. Nate, man. some programs you have that weight hour where you have all your athletes. Some schools offer that, some schools don't. I'm at a school where we don't. So my athletes, as soon as football is over, I'll see them in the hallways. But if they're playing basketball, I hardly ever see them. But as long as I know they're active and doing something, again, kind of like with my elementary kids, I know we're going to get better. Then come May with spring football and summer pride, that's when I get them back and kind of, I guess, restart the process of getting ready for football.
Cool. So do they lift in the off season? I mean, are they?
Man, as much as I would love them to,
okay.
It's depending on their head coach at the time. If the head basketball coach wants to lift weights, they lift weights. If the baseball coach wants to lift weights, the way I did it at my second year here, or my time here at Arcoma, we lifted 4 days a week from May to November.
Okay.
So even during season, we lifted. The only thing that sets us back is when they do go into that transition period to the next sport, is when they don't lift as far. But as far as kids, they're really resilient. I've learned that too.
Damn right.
Yeah,
you're getting a different. Well, you're getting a different type of kid, coach. You know what I mean? Like people are, they just think look, there are some things that I'm sure you deal with that not many head coaches have dealt with or can deal with, right? I mean, there are obstacles, obviously, not just for like where you are in terms of geographically, right? But just the whole situation of an 8-man football team dealing with certain things. So I'm sure your kids are extremely resilient in what they do.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, that I've learned, I kind of wish of what I did in high school. You only got 4 years to play basketball, organized basketball. You only got 4 years to play football, play all this, I tell my kids, play all the sports you can. Just because when you graduate, you can go play in the softball rec league, or you can go play, you can go play basketball with your friends, but it's different. I mean, you guys know that as soon as you graduate, you can't put that uniform back on. So I encourage my guys to do everything they can. Because in hindsight, it improves your program as a coach. Even if they're not lifting weights, they're still getting better.
Right.
Very, very, very interesting. Now recruiting. I wonder how recruiting is handled, and that has to be probably the hardest aspect for 8-man football, because a lot of college coaches don't know exactly what they're looking at when they're looking at things there, and I know over the years of running showcases, I've had a lot of kids that have come through that were fantastic 8-man football players, and a lot of them end up being walk-ons on places and then played, but it was a lot harder for them to get like at the highest level to get recruited, even though they were studs. I mean, there were some, like, they would compete with the best players, but they would have a hard time with the film. That's why a lot of them did go to showcases and stuff like that when they could. Talk about recruiting for 8-man football. What are some of the things that you have to do to position your kids and that kind of stuff?
So with recruiting, first I want to find out what kids want to go play at the next level.
Right.
Especially with Oklahoma small school students, most of them want to go work.
Right.
They want to go make money. They want to go provide for whatever they need to go do. So very rarely, in my case of experience, I might have had 2 or 3 kids who are ready to go play college football.
Right.
And what I do is, social media is a great tool, as far as Twitter, X, those things right there. We've actually had college coaches come visit Arcoma and get to talk to our athletes, and they think that's Nick Saban walking in from Oklahoma Panhandle State.
Hell yeah.
They think it. We had a guy from Southwestern, the tight ends coach, just come check out our athletes. And I mean, I'm telling you, my kids, they're wholly, it's so exciting for them to get to see that. So as far as recruiting, I did take a kid last year to a showcase at Henderson State in Arkansas. And for him, that was just such a great experience, just because he hasn't been around that often. So for him to see what it takes or what other college athletes look like, it kind of set that expectation of, okay, this is what my numbers need to look like. This is what, is my body type, my frame for my position group. So as far as college coaching, it's a lot of emailing. It's still film. You gather the highlights, you send them out, you contact college coaches, especially with me, networking. You text, call coaches, and, they'll help you out, even if they're not a good fit for their program. Maybe they can send you something. And like I said, for Arcoma and 8-man, having a couple of coaches and come through our program has been really huge. And what helps us too in Arcoma, being close to Fort Smith, a population of 90,000 people in Arkansas. There's a school about 5 minutes from us called Pecola. They have a Division I athlete, so their program is getting a lot of recruiting attention. But when those coaches are going to that school, I'll reach out and say, "Hey, coach, come check out our athletes. You're only 5 minutes away."
Right.
And sure enough, we'll get college coaches going, okay, even though if I don't have kids of the caliber, just getting the excitement and the interest of, I guess you would say, for my athletes coming out of the hallways, well, okay, they got college coaches coming to check him out. Again, with my kids, they don't know the difference between an NAIA and a Division I right now, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. Coach, complete sense. Absolutely. They just look at a college coach and they're like, holy hell, this is a college coach. I wish we had that problem. We hear these guys hear D3 and they're sprinting the other way. It's, because it's not the level they feel like they deserve.
Yeah.
Dude. So
our kids,
it's awesome to hear that. Like, that's the kind of the way up. I love that.
Dude, it's awesome. Like you say, you were talking about like this school that won state championship, Wilika, Oklahoma, which is really cool because their head coach is only my age. He's 25 and he just won a state championship. So, but he also had the dudes. Awesome. That's not. He also had the dudes to do it. But talking about his dudes, they were getting recruited by Division I schools. Tulsa, Air Force. I mean, a couple that I knew that were recruiting them. So it's there. That cliche you hear, if you're good enough, they'll find you. I believe in that. But I think my responsibility as a head coach is, if those kids want to go play, I'm going to do everything I can to get them there. Sometimes it's honest, like, hey, guys, hey, coach, I'm a Division II athlete. No, you're not. Hey, let's go somewhere else that you kind of fits.
Yeah.
So
pump the brakes a little bit.
Yeah, it's all about reaching out, getting college coaches into your program, getting your kids excited about it, even if they're not even interested in playing, just because it's a good look for your program and how you want to build it.
Yep, no doubt about it. Listen, Rashaan Salam was a Heisman Trophy winner for Colorado. He played 8-man football. So
I mean, people understand that, and that's what I try to get my kids to understand. It's like, hey, coach, we're playing Arcoma 8-man football. Guys, listen, there's success stories out there. All you got to do is just again, put your nose down to it and get after it. And that's the hard part right there, is getting your kids to get after it. You can do it. This is what you need to do to go do it.
Right. There's a little bit of extra work you have to do, but I think, and one of those things too, like with social media and the way things are. I mean, look, we talk about it all the time, just the ability to be seen is, on a different level now. We talk about how, recruiting used to be a lot geographical, right? Like, if you were from the Northeast, then you kind of looked at schools in the Northeast, or that's who was interested in, or that's who you recruited. Now, recruiting's on a national level. And, we literally just talked about this yesterday, how conferences in college football used to be geographically located. And that's kind of where they stuck to. Now you're seeing, Big Ten schools like USC and Oregon, right? And then span all the way over here to New Jersey, and they're all in the same conference. So I think that kind of opens the door to a lot of, other athletes that would have maybe not been seen or not had those opportunities. There's just a lot more out there to do for these guys to get seen, to get recruited. They can go to college camps, they can go to showcases, they can do all these other things. And we were talking about how difficult it used to be to make a highlight tape or just get your hands on a highlight tape. And now every one of these kids has access to Huddle or whatever and can make a highlight tape and have it out on X like that night, So but I think it starts, like you said, Coach, it starts with you and, helping your athletes, putting them in the right direction of if they want to play college ball. And I think that's really good because a lot of guys don't do that. They don't take that initiative to do it.
So like with me, I wanted to go play college football at the next level. So and I knew where I was. I was a Division III NAIA kid. It wasn't great. I was humble about it. So I, again, made a little highlight, had a Twitter account, and I'm telling you, you should see my inbox at that time, sending emails. And you talk about geography and getting recruited. I had from, being from Texas, South Texas, I offered from Florida to North Dakota to New York.
Right.
And to me,
New York?
They'd
have called you out on your accent right away, Coach. They'd have got you quick up here, buddy.
But going back to what you were saying, to me, I think if a kid wants to go play college football, there's an opportunity there just because the field is saturated. There's so many colleges looking. And I wouldn't say the transfer portal is really affecting the NAI D3 guys per se. So I think the opportunity is still there for those high school kids to get looks, to get a roster spot. And, once you get there, now it's time to kind of prove yourself.
Well, I think that also as far as from a transfer portal standpoint, the NIA, there's like no transfer portal there, so you don't jump in the transfer portal. You just basically leave. You de-enroll and you enroll in another place. So it's and NIA is a different. It's huge. It's huge in the Midwest. NIA, and and people don't realize that some of those schools offer scholarships and
so where I was at, Tabor College was in Kansas. They offered me academic and athletic scholarships, and that's what kids don't understand. When I am talking about to other students, like, hey, NAI is a great choice. With my experience, it was just too expensive for me to stay.
Right.
Not totally understandable. Like that's a big piece of this.
Yeah, and the thing is, though, the scholarships are just so important if you can get them. Just because anything you can do to help pay that tuition, it's huge.
No doubt about it. 100%. As far as because this is my kind of final question, because the kids play two ways, right? No. Is there rules with substitution? Like, do they have to play two ways, or what is?
Generally, your best 8 on offense are going to be probably your best 8 on defense.
Right.
Maybe your offensive lineman might be different just because of what kind of schemes you want to do with your D tackles. If you're looking for a smaller, quicker type bodies, then you'll have that. But as far as ruling, as far as substitutions, there's none. If you just want to rotate substitute guys in and out, you can go ahead and do it. It just depends on who you are as a coach and kind of what you want to do.
Right.
Like I was telling you, if your stud's the quarterback, he's more than likely your middle linebacker. And then your receivers are your DBs. Kind of like it is 11-man. I don't know. I can't speak for the 5As and 6As of the world, but when I was at high school in Texas, we were a 2A school, and 99% of us played both ways.
Right. Small schools. That's exactly what it is.
It's just small school football, and that's what I know, and that's what I'm a part of.
Yep. Well, you're talking to two small school guys, even up here in Jersey. There's 5 groups up here, group 5 being the biggest. We're both came from group 1 programs where, for the most part, we never left the field from the time we were sophomores to the time we graduated. Yep. And that was, everything from, offense, defense, kicking game, all that kind of stuff. So it's understandable. It makes it tough. I'll tell you that. It adds a little bit of grit to those guys going both ways.
So what's really tough about the 8-man program and rosters numbers is when those 1 or 2 guys go down to injuries.
Yep.
It derails your season. For instance, for us like this at Arcoma, we went on a 5-1 stretch. We were top 10 in the state. And then I had 2 guys go down in the same game. One of those guys were again my top 2.
The guy.
The guy. And we finished the season 5-5. So it's crazy you guys know as coaches, y'all coach long enough where what injuries can do to your season.
Yep.
And there's really nothing you can do as far as preventing it. He tore his ACL. There's nothing I could have done in the weight room or in the practice field to do it. That's just a God thing. It just happened. And unfortunately, it happened at the end of my season.
Right.
So it's just part of the game.
Do you use a smaller lineman an advantage, like quicker guys, or does it depend on the philosophy? Since they're playing both ways, I'm guessing.
Or does it depend on what you have, right? What's in the building.
You need more athletic guys, though, because they're going both ways, probably.
So I had, my first year here, when I was telling you, my first year, we ran that unbalanced single wing, and I had a guard that was like 120 pounds. Just because I mean, let's be honest. He couldn't catch. He couldn't run.
Right. Right. But he's probably quick.
But he was a body, and he was quick, and he could be a pulling guard for us. When we went to the spread this year, more of an empty look. I had a center that was 305, great feet, solid kid.
Damn.
Man, if he
Oklahoma boy.
Yeah, if he wanted to go play college football, he could. But he's one of those kids that wants to go work, go provide for his family.
Yep.
I get that completely. And then my two guards, a pulling guard that's probably around 220, 230. He's about 5'9". He's a freshman. And then I got another one about 6'4".
Wow.
220 freshman. Yeah. So it's kind of like this, and that,
Yeah, you got a little ladder. You got like stairs going.
Yeah, I got, it's the steps. And Coach, you're right. It's just depending on what you got. My philosophy, I'm not going to put a guy out there that's big to be a guard if he can't do it.
Yeah.
I'm really big. If I got a guy who can block that's 120 pounds and can do what I need him to do, I'm going to pick him over the 305 guy.
Yep.
Damn right.
That's just
look, Coach, that's a good coach. Like that's coaching. You know what I'm saying? So, and it actually makes you a better coach because you're doing way more with way less. It's not the caliber of kid. It's just what you have to work with. Like I mean, I'd say it all the time. Like, look, I'm at a Group 3 school right now, and we're pretty much 2 platoon, right? Like there's maybe 2 guys that go both ways. But the guys that are at that Group 1 school where that one guy is their stud across the board, or they might not have this guy or that guy, you really have to be like almost like an amoeba and fit with what kid you have. And look, it's not one of those like, this is what we do. This is my system. These are the plays we run. And like, it is not that. If you want to be successful, you gotta really figure it out on your own, which allows you to now look, it opens up your options in terms of, look, we can run this offense, I've run this offense, I've run that offense, so that now down the road, like rosters change, schools, like dynamics changed, kids change, like, hey, we used to do this, maybe we went away from it for 2 to 3 years, and now, oh look, now I have that again.
Yep.
We're back to that. Or maybe you do get a stud and you're like, all right, well, like, here's what we can do, right? Like, those are the really cool things that I think a lot of guys like, take advantage, like, or they take for granted, right? Like, I'm always going to have somebody that could sling it, or I've always had big linemen that can pull and be athletic, right? You got to do a lot less, or a lot more with less. And that's just, at least it keeps it interesting for you, good thing you're young, but that's all I'm saying. Good thing you're young and you got all that energy because
that's not a joke, but if you're talking about coaching, and I'm not taking it away from the big school guys at all, but I feel like these small guys, especially in the 8-man guy community where I'm at, if anybody is, we're coaching.
Yeah.
Because we're developing athletes that might not necessarily, again, be a guard. Now I'm teaching a kid who's a guard. It's 120 pounds to be a guard, or I'm teaching a guy, who's never thrown the football to be a quarterback. So it's a lot. It's a lot of coaching, and I think that's what I signed up for, and that's what I get the most joy out of is being that guy to develop those athletes. And it's such a pleasure to be in this profession. And again, like you said, being 25, and then I'm waiting on that one athlete. I never had him yet, so I'm waiting on that dude to come.
Well, listen, you'll be more than prepared for when you do get him. And look, Coach, to speak to the specific 8 community, right? So literally how this all came about was I was just on, Twitter, X or whatever, saw somebody post about something, reached out to him, and he's, was like, hey, I'm not the podcast guy, but look, it was unbelievable the amount of guys that reached out and were like, hey, I'd love to come talk about it. I'd love to let people know kind of like what this is, because like Coach said, like, we don't talk to them. People don't even know that this exists on the East Coast, right? For the most part, unless you're a true blood, like, in it football guy. But your community, man, it was awesome to see the networking and the brotherhood of like this 8-man community that was just all into, hey, let's talk about this and let people know like this is a real thing.
So,
And look, it is legit. This isn't some, club clown show thing that these guys do for kicks. Like, this is legit football, just with less dudes.
Yeah. So for state of Oklahoma, we're part of an Oklahoma 8-man coaches association, and you talk about the brotherhood. That's not a joke. If we're talking about 8-man, I think I can speak of nationwide, but specifically Oklahoma, we're such a close knit group. There's a lot of head coaches in the area or in the state that are around my age, and we're part of a group chat, and it's the best thing ever.
I can't imagine.
Just because of me not being from Oklahoma, not playing 8-man, and then me jumping in the state of Oklahoma and being a head coach at 8-man, I don't think there's a single guy in our state as a head coach at 8-man that's not willing to share anything with you. If I want to go call a coach that I never talked to, but he's an 8-man guy, it's open world, open book per se. I mean, it's amazing the amount of support I have from just coaches that I really don't have any relationship in other than being an 8-man guy. And again, I can speak through that from nationwide. It's such a cool fraternity. I haven't been an 11-man coach, so I really don't know how it is up there. But 8-man, if you're an 8-man guy, you're pretty close just because of that.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Well, great stuff, Coach. Really, really interesting talking 8-man football. I learned a whole lot today.
So cool.
Yeah, and we're glad to really highlight what you're doing. It's really cool. Very impressive being a head coach already for the amount of years you've been a head coach as such a young guy. By the time you get to be my age, they're going to be like, I coached for 35 years. You'll still be a young guy.
Yeah,
you'll still be a young guy. Yeah. Coach, I just had one more question, and not to like put you on the spot or anything, but would you ever think about going to 11-man?
So
in terms of a coaching move, I know you're going to a new school and you're really, you're setting it all up and doing that, but would you do that? Is that something that's like maybe down the road for you, a transition to maybe a coordinator position or another head coaching position?
I mean, there's times where I think I just want to be an assistant head coach, and I've, for instance, I applied for 2 11-man jobs and I got interviews. And the big kicker for both of those jobs were, hey, you don't have 11-man head coaching experience, so we didn't, hey, that's fine.
You're like, I'm also 25, but
that's
I've already been a head coach, but that's okay, right? Like,
the parent, just because I'm 11-man school, 8-man school, the parents don't change. Nothing changes as far as academics, students, other than the 3 extra people. But speaking for right now, I mean, me being 6 years in, 8-man coach, I think. I'm going to say it's always an opportunity to go back and to be an 11-man coordinator or even a head coach one day. But right now, I think where God has placed me, I'm an 8-man. Like I said, when me and my wife talk about it, God's going to put us where we can best serve Him. And right now, it's the Canadian high school in Oklahoma, and it's 8-man. And so we're just going to run with it and see what we can do at this program.
Cool stuff, man.
Love it.
Really, really cool
awesome,
stuff.
Coach. Appreciate you, man.
No, I appreciate you guys a bunch. Like I said, it's my first time getting to speak out and be a part of this. So spreading the love of the 8-man game, it's that's all we want to do. It's just say, hey guys, it's real football too.
Yeah,
absolutely, it is 100%.
Damn right. There's helmets, shoulder pads. There's banging around. There's injuries. Like there's a lot. Of shit. Like
nothing changes,
Coach. You just keep doing what you're doing, man. Like it's really impressive, especially at such a young age, to kind of have all that moxie and that fire and that drive and do all those things and actually want to deal with, all the other stuff that goes along with being a head coach in any sport, especially at the high school level with, not just the kids themselves, but all the other stuff from administrators to parents to this, to that.
Yeah.
Like you're doing God's work, buddy. And we appreciate guys like you.
Yep. Appreciate it, guys.
No problem. Have a great day.
Take care, Coach.
All right. Bye. All right, that was great. That was very insightful, by the way. I learned a lot. One of those things where
that's working, baby. That's coaching, dude.
Well, I bet you 8-man's fun.
Dude, it's got Dave, think about how much fun when we're doing like flag or we're doing that kind of stuff. Like, cause look, you can scheme it. You know what I'm saying? Like, yes, it's always Jimmy's and Joe's, but look, you can come up with something to give you an advantage scheme wise where look, like, 11 man, everybody runs inside zone. Everybody runs this, everybody runs that. Like you could scheme some stuff up, I'm sure. And I'm sure it's like, fast. Like, there's gotta be, look, point scoring is probably never an issue. You know what I mean? Like, just because I feel like less guys, like, damn, like you talk about a 120-pound guard. Like it kind of reminded me almost like when we talked to Coach Matt Sakis at Caldwell College for the sprint football stuff, right? Like almost like maybe 8-man guys would be more conducive to that, even though you're adding guys, it's still like that smaller, fast-paced type, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I'd love to like see it and like, like see what the heck they do, like some of that kind of stuff. Cause man, you get a quarterback that can boogie a little bit. Whoo. It's got to be fun.
There's no doubt about it. Definitely. I'm certain it's fun. So, all right. Until next time. When are we back?
Possibly Friday.
Right. Okay, cool. All right. See you then.